everybody, it's Thorn. I'm going to try to do this really quickly because I actually have a work meeting I'm about to jump into. But I've been thinking about this for a little while and I wanted to kind of make a response video to some of my more popular book recommendation videos. I get a lot of comments with folks who want to know, well, why haven't you recommended X book, right? X classic book. And often it's a book like The Spiral Dance or Drawing Down the Moon or Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, something like that. Cunningham, Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. Why don't those books show up on my recommended list when I do them? Do I hate those books? No, I don't hate those books, okay? Those books were formative for me. They impacted me heavily, and I do regard them as classics. I do think that they are important to read, particularly from kind of a historical context to get a sense of the movement, how far we've come, the big players in our movement, etc. But I don't recommend them to beginners anymore, and it's because I think we've come a long way, and I think that there are much better books available. I think that a lot of the times those books, they represent moments, and those moments have passed. I think that we have books now that are more inclusive, that speak more to the concerns of witches and pagans today. And I think that there are books now that are better informed by things like educational theory, books that are more practical, more pragmatic, books that look to internet culture and the impact that social media has had on our movements, and are just broader, have more relevant perspectives today, and are also more approachable. I think that we have fallen kind of into this rut of recommending the same books, particularly the books that we might have grown up with when we were coming into the craft. I know those of us who were first becoming interested in witchcraft, I came in the 90s, but if you came in the 80s or earlier, and I know a lot of folks here have, we tend to point to those kind of bigwig players, Starhawk, Ray Buckland, Scott Cunningham, Margot Adler, okay? Those are the ones that just kind of immediately come to mind. I mean, Z Budapest, right? And like, you don't need me to make a video about like, you know, the controversies that have surrounded Z Budapest in recent years. But those were books that were always on lists, always on lists. And we could go back even further, right? Gerald Gardner, Sybil Leek, etc. And I don't point to those books anymore because there are literally thousands more that have been published since then. And I feel like those books in particular that I've mentioned are dated. And while they might be informative for somebody who's interested in thinking about like how has witchcraft or paganism, polytheism, etc., how have those things changed broadly, they're not going to necessarily be relatable or relevant to, let's say, a 16 or 17-year-old who's just interested in traditional witchcraft, right? Or a 24-year-old who's seeking their first initiatory Wiccan coven, right? Like you'll want to know who these folks are, okay? But I would never recommend Cunningham as a first Wicca book. I would never recommend Buckland as an intro to witchcraft. I would not recommend Drawing Down the Moon as a survey of pagan and magical traditions in the US. And it's because our climates have changed so much. And those pictures are no longer accurate. And it's not because those writers weren't brilliant. It's just because the wheel of time keeps spinning, you know? So that's why those books aren't on my list. It doesn't mean that I don't want you to read them. I do want you to read them. But in my kind of quick videos that I post of essential reading, I don't include them. And it's because, you know, if you have a limited amount of money and you're standing in a Barnes & Noble and you need to make a choice, those aren't what I think you should reach for anymore. And, you know, you can go look at my book videos to see what I do recommend. But yeah, that's why those things aren't on the list. There's new stuff. I think there's better stuff. I think our movements are, they're more complex than they used to be. I think they're more inclusive than they used to be. And I think that those are the things that we should be emphasizing, not the stuff that was important to us decades ago. I just think our climate has changed. So that's what that is. you know, I'll always be grateful to those writers and thinkers. And as I said, I do think that they should be part of wider curricula as far as like what people should be reading, what people should be exposed to. But if a young person on the internet asks me for a book about Wicca, it's not going to be Cunningham. It's definitely not going to be Starhawk. It's sure as hell not going to be Gerald Gardner, right? Like there's other stuff. So I hope you all are well, and let me know what book would you recommend to a newcomer like that? What are your essential books? I've got a video from a couple of years ago about my essential books. You should go look at that. What would be yours?